Hello, this is Paul Scheele, and it's Saturday in November. That means that the paraliminal that we're playing with today is Belief Session B. Yesterday we played with the idea of reframing and changing our personal history around a significant belief that kept us stuck in certain areas of our lives. What we're doing is we're going back to the initial sensitizing event, the symptom producing event, and the symptom intensifying event. Those three major events, conscious or unconscious for us, were the things that put into play a belief that we had been carrying with us. When you go back into each of those and say, hey, I could have done this differently, here's how I might have shifted that, what that does is it opens you of thinking a whole new way of operating around a belief that has been self-limiting until now. Today, we're taking the second very important step. This is when we follow the same protocol, but what we're doing is we're going into times in our lives in which we could have installed a new self-enhancing belief. So, for example, what I remember when I was a little boy, back when I was living in New York, it was probably when I was still preschool. My brothers were and sister were in school, and I noticed on my father's dresser that there were $3, and I took those dollars. Well, he found out about the fact that it was missing, and he went into a rage about, where's my money? I had $3 on. Where did it go? And of course, I was terrorized. I was really afraid of it. And so I figured a way to find it for him. I stuffed it next to his shoes in the same closet. And I said, oh, I found it. It's over here. Well, I carried that with me for so long. I felt so guilty about it. Later in life, when I would give a $10 bill to a clerk at a store and I would receive change as if it was a $20 bill, I'd always stop, turn around, go back and say, hey, you gave me too much money. Other people would say, why in the world would you do that? That's crazy. It was free money. And I said, no, it wasn't my money to take. That would have been a problem at the end of the day for the storekeeper. So the idea is that shift for me was important, but it still carried that kind of a sting with me from a very early age. Now, later in life, I met a man named John Asraf, and his seminal story at the beginning of a book that he wrote called You Can Have It All is he was working at a country club, shining shoes and cleaning the golf shoes of men in the men's locker room. And somebody who always carried around a big wad of bills dropped a $100 bill on the floor of the locker room. We grabbed it and ran out to the man as he was getting into the car and said, I found your $100 bill. I wanted to make sure that you had it. And the man was so impressed that he took John aside and said, this shows a lot of trustworthiness. This is a big thing. I would like to show you what I know about making the kind of money that I've made in my life. And so became a bit of a mentor to John. Well, that idea is an example of a very good potential self-enhancing belief that if I were to install that within myself, and I found money, I was able to give it to somebody and do that at an earlier age, that could increase my belief in my trustworthiness and my willingness to be honest, whatever it might be. So if you look at your life and you can see that there are some areas of your life where you know you could achieve something that's important to you, you want to achieve that important thing, but you consistently haven't, you might take a look. What are the beliefs or attitudes that you carry with yourself that if those attitudes and beliefs would shift, you would be able to more easily achieve or accomplish what it is that you've set your heart on. This is the ideal setup for the belief paraliminal session B. So what we're going to do is with that paraliminal go back to an initial sensitizing event. For example, my situation with my father and the $3 on his dresser, right? That would be a situation where I felt guilty. And the way in which guilt holds us back is we take our adult value system and we go back to that child, that younger self, and we say to that, how could you have done that? That was such a bad thing. Don't ever do that thing again. But what happens is we continue to carry that messaging of shame, humiliation, guilt along with us, as if the emotion of guilt is going to serve us somehow. It doesn't. It just takes us out energetically. And so we go back to that situation with our adult values. Meet that child just before the event occurred. Do you get that? So there's the initial sensitizing event. Go just before the event occurred and ask that child, hey, would you be willing in this situation, knowing what I know, to behave differently right there? And of course, that younger self would say, absolutely. I don't want to live a life of torture that I've been experiencing or that I might experience in the future. And so you actually see that event unfolding as you would choose to have it. That's the beginning. That's what we would call the inception of that positive belief. Now you think of a later time in your life where that might be enhanced, like a storekeeper for me gives me too much money and I return the money, that sort of thing. So the idea, or, I bought a car and I finished paying the car loan and I get the car now, it's such a wonderful thing, right? So I can think about honesty and integrity around finances that can be a life-enhancing belief system that can get me to the next financial level that I choose. Do you get this as an illustration of how that works? So it's an initial sensitizing event that you could imagine. A later event in life, which is a symptom-producing event that you could imagine having this new way of being there, developing that belief. And then a later time, more recently in life, in which that would have played out. And so what you're doing is you're stringing these three symptom intensifying event with the symptom producing event with the inception or the initial sensitizing event. You're bringing all three of those together as, hey, this is how I operate. This is a belief that I hold about myself. I know that this is the kind of person I am. And as I look to my future, I look toward it with a positive expectancy and an optimism that I have all the resources I need to achieve that goal that I desire. And in this way, any guilt, shame, humiliation that started an unnecessary belief gets to be shifted for now and for all time. Now, you may have heard me talk about the anxiety-free paraliminal, and that's where we have an anxiety about the future. You go past the future event and see that you've been successful, and that blows out anxiety. If you have guilt about the past, you go before the event that you feel guilty about, and with your values, redo that situation, knowing that, of course, if you could have redone it, you would have. So you install at that place that feeling of self-compassion, self-love, self-worth. And, when we think about the accomplishment of any significant goal, there's always some strategy that we'll use, some mental steps that we'll take, some actions that we will take, executing some strategy that will help us get there. There's also a physiology, a way in which we'll carry ourselves as we begin and as we engage in whatever activities necessary to move us towards that goal. And there's also the beliefs. Our beliefs are so key because they're the gatekeeper to the real resources that are within us. And with that, I would invite you to find a time today to listen to the Belief Paraliminal Session B, and the next Saturdays throughout this month, also come back to it, revisit it, and continue to play with the 7 paraliminals that we've looked at this week throughout this week. Now, I know you might not have some of the paraliminals in your collection. If you'd like to add any of them, you can get them at paraliminal.com. And whatever paraliminal you do have, consider taking the message that I've shared with you today and listen to any paraliminal that you have to help you gain access to the rich and powerful resources within you. Have a spectacular rest of the month. I hope to see you again very soon. Peace and blessings.